So Manchester United have recently been linked with Sporting's Francisco Trincao, with the asking price being around £30 million. Now the links are somewhat obvious, as Trincao played as the right-sided interior forward during Amorim's time at Sporting. However, he isn't a young prospect like Quenda is, and he also has just 1 year left on his contract come the summer. And so despite on the surface £30 million seeming like a reasonable price, I would say that he's actually slightly overpriced considering he just has 1 year left on his contract. Now alongside this, I just don't think Trincao is the style or the level of player that United should be bringing in to play on the right side of the front three. And so in this video, I'm going to be breaking down why I wouldn't sign Trincao, as well as giving some suggestions on who could be better options for United to pursue. But let's start off by analysing Trincao. What type of player is he and how good is he? Well, Trincao is a left-footed right winger who primarily wants to drift infield into central positions rather than sitting on the outside of the fullback receiving the ball in a 1v1. And so I wouldn't describe him as a natural winger, more of a wide playmaker, someone like a David Silva or a Juan Mata. Now don't get me wrong, Trincao isn't a bad player. He's technically astute when receiving the ball between the lines, able to work in tight spaces, with his close ball control enabling him to glide past opposition players, and he does have an eye for a well-weighted reverse pass to release a runner in behind, or a cross as he opens up his body, curling an in-swinging ball into the box. Now unfortunately FBref doesn't have the Portuguese Primeira Liga stats anymore, but if we go over to who scored, we can look at his stats from this season, and we can clearly see that Trincao is one of the leading creators in the league. But before I go into more detail, if you do want to check out any cheap, good quality football jerseys, go over to www.jerseyfifa.co. They've got a variety of different retro and current season jerseys, including this Ronaldinho PSG third shirt from the 2001-2002 season, his first year in Europe after leaving Gremio, or this pink Zidane shirt from the 97-98 season. If you use code Atlantis at checkout, you will get a 10% discount, so I'll leave a link in the description and in the comment section below. Trincao has completed the second most key passes per 90 of any player in the league this season, behind only Orkan Koçu, the third most dribbles, and rating wise he sits second only to Victor Gyökeres, which combined with his 8 goals and 11 assists in 26 games, clearly shows that Trincao is one of the best, if not the best right-sided attacker in the league. However, my issue is that it's one thing being the best player in a given role in the Portuguese league, particularly at a top 3 club, but this doesn't necessarily translate to a Premier League club who also want to compete in Europe. And when you look at Trincao's FBref report in the Champions League this season, in the 787 minutes he's played, his non-penalty goals, non-penalty XG and XG assisted are all below the 30th percentile. And when you look at his progressive passing, ball carrying and dribbling metrics, you can clearly see that he hasn't been able to translate this Primeira Liga output to a higher level European league. Now the sample size is fairly small, under 1,000 minutes, so you can't fully rely on his Champions League output alone. However, this is also what I sense with the eye test as well. See, when watching Sporting at the start of the season when Ruben Amorim was there, one thing I noticed was that during artificial counter-attacks, when Sporting would go long from build-up into Gyökeres, and Gyökeres was able to link play, it seemed like Sporting lacked direct pace in the interior forward positions, with neither Trincao or Pedro Goncalves being the type of attacking midfielders to provide serious threat when running in behind ahead of the centre forward. And in the Premier League, I just don't think we'll see the same output from Trincao consistently, as whilst he is fairly quick in terms of his acceleration when he receives the ball in order to change direction and dribble past the defender, I think in the Premier League, where the athleticism and physicality is of a higher level than in Portugal, Trincao could struggle to impact games, and I think he may encounter the same issues that we've seen with João Felix and Jadon Sancho, and that's that with the added athleticism and physicality, this seems to be able to level the playing field and make the likes of Sancho and João Felix a lot less effective than they are in other leagues. And whilst all three do have a high level of technical ability, I don't think they have the aggression, assertiveness, physicality or the turn of pace that is needed to be one of the best creators in the Premier League. And to be honest, I see Trincao as quite similar to Andre Gomes, someone who can look like a top level player in a continental league, but someone who looks fairly average in the Premier League. And overall, I think Francisco Trincao is more of a Wolves level signing than a Manchester United signing. Even if he was to alternate with Ahmad at right wing back, I'd prefer to have Quenda instead, or even someone like Roger Fernandes now that Quenda has gone to Chelsea, but even the price puts me off. 30 million for Trincao with 1 year left on his contract is pretty overpriced in my opinion. If United really wanted him, they could just wait till next summer and get him on a free, or they could just go for a superior alternative this summer. But who could that be? Well, I do have two players in mind, both of whom I think could be used as either a right wing back or a right-sided interior forward, and are quicker across the ground than Trincao and are also putting up far better numbers in terms of their output. So who are the players? Well, they're the same two players that I mentioned in the Tyler Dibbling video I released last week or around then. I'll leave that linked in the eye above in case you want to check it out. And they are PSG's Kang-in Lee and Roma's Matías Soulé. So Kang-in Lee is around the same age as Trincao, only a year younger at 24, while Soulé is 22 this month. Now the big difference between Soulé and Kang-in Lee in comparison to Trincao is that from the eye test you can see that the Roma and PSG men are a bit sharper and quicker across the ground, particularly when receiving possession and having to turn away from pressure or beat a defender in a 1v1. I actually think their footwork in general is also just a bit quicker than Trincao's, alongside greater acceleration, and also statistically, even though we can't make a direct comparison due to FBref not having Trincao's Primera Liga stats, if you look at Kang-in Lee and Matías Soulé's FBref reports, you can see that they are already producing the sort of output that matches the eye test. And I'll show you both players' FBref reports in more detail in just a second, but in terms of how they fit into Amorim's system, I think both could either play as a right-sided interior forward or even at right wing back, and to be honest maybe also on the left in both of those roles as well. Now from the eye test, aesthetically anyway, maybe not to the same playmaking level, Kang-in Lee resembles David Silva but a bit quicker, being an exceptional manipulator of the ball with his left foot, having a very smooth technique, also being efficient with quick interplay in congested areas, alongside having the vision to thread a through ball or switch play with a driven pass with very little backspin. He'd be effective either receiving the ball on the outside as the fullback and setting up a 1v1, looking to either beat his man or open up space for an in-swinging cross, or moving infield centrally, knitting play together in tighter areas with 1 and 2 touch exchanges, or receiving the ball in his back foot, turning and then driving into space. Comparatively, I don't think Matías Soulé is as good in the defensive or middle third, operating in congested areas and progressing the ball forward, but he may be slightly better than Kang-in Lee in the final third. Now don't get me wrong, Kang-in Lee isn't a dud in the final third, he has the ability to finish first time from cutbacks, or cut inside onto his left foot from the right side and curl the ball towards the far post. But when I look at Soulé, I see someone who is stylistically a left-footed blend of Garnacho and Greenwood, someone who is an assertive finisher and just seems to have a natural decisiveness when finishing under pressure, similar to Greenwood in this regard, just not at that level at the moment. In terms of current ability, Kang-in Lee is the better of the two, but that's mainly down to an incredible level of stamina and work rate on Kang-in Lee's behalf, and you can see this from the defensive section of his FBref report, where despite playing for PSG, by far the most dominant side domestically over the last 365 days, when compared against every other attacking midfielder and winger in Europe's top 5 leagues, he ranks in the 94th percentile for the amount of dribblers he's tackled, the 88th for the amount of dribblers he's challenged, and the 85th for the percentage of dribblers he's tackled. And so quite frankly, adjusted for the possession of the team he's in, Kang-in Lee is putting up elite level output for the defensive areas of his game, and the importance of this kind of output can't be underestimated, and it does give him a bit of an advantage over Soulé. I think Soulé probably has higher potential because I think Kang-in Lee develops more into a playmaker like a David Silva or a Juan Mata, eventually evolving into a right-sided central midfielder, either in a 3-man midfield or playing between the lines as a right-sided interior forward, whereas Soulé is stylistically similar to Garnacho and will probably evolve into more of a Salah or Mane type of inside forward. If we look at Matías Soulé's FBref report over the past 365 days, his non-penalty goals and non-penalty XG don't look that impressive, ranking in just the 15th and 23rd percentile respectively. However, in Serie A last season, both of these stats were around the 50th percentile, and this season for Roma, in the 1,183 minutes he's played, his non-penalty goals are even higher, around the 60th percentile, and so I can definitely see his goal scoring output beginning to improve as he develops further. But also, when you look at his chance creating and ball progression via his passing and ball carrying, you can clearly see that output wise he does have the potential to be the real deal. As in Serie A this season, his metrics for his successful take-ons, ball carrying metrics, XG assisted, progressive passes, and passes into the final third and penalty area all rank around the 80th to 90th percentile range, and even over the past 365 days, whilst not as high when compared against Europe's top 5 leagues, for a player of his age, they are still very impressive, and so unlike Garnacho, I think Soulé has significantly more to his game than just carrying the ball into space and looking to break in behind into goal scoring positions. He's someone who has a technical ability to be more of a playmaker as well, which is why stylistically I think he is a blend between Amad and Garnacho, maybe even closer stylistically to Amad at the moment. Kang-in Lee, on the other hand, as I previously said, is more of a playmaker, with his passing metrics, even factoring in that he is at PSG, still being incredibly impressive in terms of his ability to retain and progress possession, ranking in the mid 90th percentiles for most of those metrics and the 84th for his XG assisted. And whilst he may not have the same level of explosiveness with the ball at his feet as Soulé, or being as high volume a dribbler, when he does look to take on his man, his percentage rate is still very high, in the 96th percentile to be precise. And so if United wanted an incredibly hard-working right-sided interior forward with a high volume of defensive output, who is also more of a playmaker who can drop into deeper, central and more congested areas, stylistically similar to someone like Juan Mata, then Kang-in Lee is that player. Whilst if the preference was someone who was more of a forward than a midfielder, a better dribbler and someone who could look to make movements ahead of the centre forward, then Matías Soulé is more akin to this type of player. Now I am still unsure about who I would prefer out of Kang-in Lee and Matías Soulé, and so I'll make another video analysing where they would fit into the transfer strategy this summer as a whole, as well as coming up with some outside of the box tactical ideas to get the best out of both players in Amorim's system. So if you do want to see that video, make sure you subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you do get notified when it comes out. And if you do want to check out any cheap, good quality football jerseys, you can go over to Jersey Fever, use code Atlantis at checkout for a discount. I'll leave it linked in the description and in the comments section below. And if you do want to sign up to my Patreon to read any of my articles or sign up for the in-game Instagram group chat, I'll leave that linked on the end screen now as well.